You can use the chat box to include any questions you might have for Madeline. But otherwise, please keep your microphones muted, and we will have a great presentation. So I'd like to introduce Madeline Levitan with our presentation of From the Peace Corps to Rosa Parks Elementary, One Teacher's Story. Madeline, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Brian. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. This is a really exciting opportunity for me to be able to share my story on how I became the educator that I am right now. And just wanted to let you know that also it's a work in progress, and it's not, you know, I'm sharing my story not to say that this is an end, but also a continuation of my endeavors to become a good educator. So I just want to share that, you know, obviously my name is Madeline Levitan. I am a resource teacher for San Diego Unified School District in the Family Engagement Department. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I do towards the end of the presentation. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on just giving you a little bit about my story, about my journey on becoming an educator. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my childhood. I'm going to be talking my experiences in the Peace Corps, and then my experiences at Rosa Parks and what brought me to Rosa Parks in a community called City Heights here in San Diego. And then I'm going to be talking some more information or some more, going to give you a little insight of what our department has been working on in our district. I'm going to go ahead and as I'm speaking, I want you to think about just a message that I want to give you is my message to you is that my educational belief is that I feel that all stakeholders, all students, all parents, all families, all community really want to feel like they feel welcome, like that their voice is valued, that they're being heard. And this is my story, obviously, but I also want you to connect your stakeholders to my story. And just think that all of us have our roots somewhere, and we come with those roots when we come in education. And I just want you to think about that as you are with your students and teaching them, or whether you're in the community and you see your parents in the community as your students. Just want you to think about, you know, really having their voice heard and their them feeling that they're valued. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and show the next slide. Brian, do you have the next slide? Thank you. So this is a picture about me, or not a picture about me, but this is a picture of me. And what I want to do is I want to encourage you right now to, in the chat, and do not push return until I tell you to, please. I want you to look at this photo, and I want you to think about, as you're looking at this photo, what do you see me as? Like whether it's a certain type, whether it's my gender or whether it's my race or whether how I look. I want you to think about what are the identities that come to your mind as you look at this picture. I just want you to type in the chat, but do not push return yet. We're going to do this activity called Waterfall, which is an activity that we learned from Dr. Doug Fisher, who has written a book called The Distance Learning Playbook. And he is a professor at San Diego State under the leadership department, educational leadership department. And he's also a mentor of mine. I actually got my master's and my preliminary administrative credential with him. And so I just want you to think about, when you look at this picture, who is this person? What are the identities that this person identifies with? You can write more than one. Type it into the chat, but do not push return until I tell you to. We're going to do an activity called Waterfall. In a sense, this is really an activity that really brings in all your students and your participants into a presentation, especially during online learning through the computer, where you're getting their attention and their participation and their engagement all at once, rather than having one student at a time or one participant at a time sharing their thought, and then other students will just copy from a response from another participant. So I'm just going to give you a minute to think about that. Okay. And at the count of 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to push return. And you're going to, when you push return, you're going to see hopefully all your responses. And then Brian, if you could do me a favor, if you could just mention some of these remarks about what has been written in the chat.
Absolutely.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, please push your turn. Let's see your comments in the chat.
Okay, so we have strong woman of color, confident woman, light-spirited, energetic woman, a caring, mindful woman, educator, beautiful African-American woman, happy, kind, proud, woman, strength, kind eyes, happy, beautiful, black hair with a touch of gray, ethnicity, Caribbean, woman, woman, and smart.
Yes, thank you. That is wonderful. I really encourage you to do this type of activity with your students. Just a great way of engaging them, and and it feels good to be hearing all these also. So thank you so much. Now I want to share what I identify as. When I think of myself, this is what I want society, and this is what I want everybody to see me as. And these are just a couple of my identities. Brian, if you could just go ahead and put the identities on there. Okay, I'm Afro-Latina, bilingual, Colombian, Jewish, I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant, I'm educated, indigenous from Colombia, I'm a mother, I'm also a daughter, and I'm a sister, and I'm a friend. I consider myself a very good friend. And so these are, the reason why I wanted to start off this presentation with this activity is because I really want us to think about how our stakeholders come to us. They have an identity, they have roots. And it's really important as educators that we really delve into those roots and get to know our stakeholders, because that really helps them to feel more valued, and they feel more important. And they feel like you're actually taking that effort and that time to get to know them. And once our stakeholders know, our students and our families in our community know that we really care about them and we are interested in their voice, then I feel like that opens up doors for them to be able to express themselves honestly and frankly. Thank you. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about myself. I was adopted at 7.5 years old from Cali, Colombia at the end of 1980. Here are some pictures of me. On the left-hand side, you see myself with some kids, the kids that I was in an orphanage with. And this was the day that my mom and my dad and my sister, Raquel, that you see on the right-hand side, came to get me from the orphanage. This was that week. And so as you can tell, I'm very happy, I'm very excited. But let me tell you why I was excited to be adopted by a family, and just how my feelings about it. Just a little bit about myself. I was forced to start working at 5 years old. I remember that I worked as a house cleaner, I took care of a family. At 5 years old, I was the one who took care of the kids. I cooked, I cleaned, I did not go to school. And one of the reasons was because of that this occurred was because my biological father and biological mother, and we'll call them Kiko and Alicia, were separated. They got separate, or they ended up getting divorced or separated. And my Kiko was worked in construction. And so he traveled a lot and he couldn't obviously take care of me. So he would, from what I remember, he would have some sort of agreement with a family who would take care of me. But in those households, even after I believe there was some sort of exchange, monetary exchange to take care of me, the family would usually take advantage of me not being taken care of. And so I would be made to clean and to cook. So it was really difficult early years in my childhood. And so instead of actually putting up with a lot of abuse that I faced in these families, and I remember at least being in 3 or 4 different families. I think the idea was for me to stay with these families while Kiko went to work. He would come back and then he would pick me up and I would be with him. But I usually, because of the abuse, I would always just want to live out in the streets rather than stay with a family. And every kind of abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, all that abuse I faced at already 5 years old. So I prefer to live in the streets than actually be with these families. School experience, I never went to school, but I do remember being on the streets and sitting in the streets and saying, and looking at those students walking by with their uniforms and their new bags and walking to school. And I so desired to be in school. And I remember also one time walking into one of the schools, and I would just like peek in, walk through the hallway, peeked in, and I looked at all the students sitting in the desk and rows and listened to a teacher, and I so wanted to be there. And I just remember somebody from the staff from the school just escorting me out and saying, you don't belong here. And, I didn't have any shoes. My clothes were old, were torn. And, I was a child of the streets. And so I just remember early on, there was something about school that I really wanted to be a part of that culture and that environment. At the age of 7, I was put in an orphanage, just because the family that's kind of was watching over me a little bit. I realized that it was really dangerous for me to be in the streets. I slept underneath lampposts. Any kind of things that you imagine about what happens in the children in the streets, I lived through that. That was me. And then when I was 7.5 years old, I was adopted. That was the thing I most wanted in my life. I just wanted to be with a family that took care of me. And when I was adopted, my mom told me that they took me to a store and they said, Marilyn, you can pick any toy that you want in this store. And I went directly straight to the book section and I chose a book. I don't know exactly why I chose that book, but I just know that a book for me was more important than a toy. And I believe it had to do with just seeing all the kids walking to and from school and wanting to be a student myself. I came to the States, the United States, obviously when I was 7.5 years old. And I was a first grader when I was 7.5 years old. And my parents found Miss Judy, who was my first grade teacher. And she just so happened to have been also a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras. So she spoke Spanish. And I just felt so welcomed in her class. It was a small, kind of like a Montessori type school where it wasn't just sitting down and being taught to. It was a lot of exploration. It was a lot of going outside and just doing a lot of experiments, which I really enjoyed a lot. Just in general though, elementary was really difficult for me. I didn't, I never, even though I wanted to be still part of school system, I just didn't know how. I didn't have any prior experience with it. So it was really difficult. So I was overwhelmed and I wanted to give up a lot of times. In third grade, by third grade, I had already skipped, in third grade, I skipped so many days of school. And unfortunately, we were living in Boston. And at that time, my parents weren't even aware because the school did not reach out to my parents saying, hey, your daughter hasn't been coming to school. And they didn't really find out that I was missing school really until towards the end of the year. And, our family was going through a lot during that time. And so there's some difficult times for us. But let me tell you, when I became a third grade teacher, whenever one of my students was absent, instead of just letting it go, I just remembered my experience and I would call my families. I would call the family and I would say, hey, Maria didn't come today. I just wanted to know, is she going to come to school? It's better to be late than not come at all. And it always ended up happening that the parents were at work and they didn't even know that their child had not even come to school. So from my past experiences, I used it during my profession, being in the classroom and working with students. And then in middle school, I was talking to my mom last night about this, that it wasn't until middle school, probably like around middle 6th, 7th grade or so, where I actually started comprehending, where I actually started understanding. And I know I read somewhere where the research shows that children or people who are learning a language, in particular this one, English, it takes them at least about 7 years to actually fully grasp and comprehend the English language. And sure enough, around 6th or 7th grade, I started to flourish. I started to take more risk. I started to be able to participate. And also I was in a good class where they really saw my potential. And all the support that I got from my mom and dad, they were amazing. They were just always, they knew I had it in me, but they wanted to, you know, be able to guide me towards that path that they knew I had within me. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. Also, as I'm presenting, if you have any questions while I'm speaking and you want to put in the chat or any comments, please feel free to do that. And later on, we'll be able to address those as well. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my education and my work. I know that, you know, we're actually going from my experience as a child, but now as my experience as an educator. Just wanted to share with you that in from 1992 to 1996, I went to UCSB, Gauchos, with my sociology, and I majored in sociology. I first went there as a psychology major, and then I realized, I was like, wow, you know, Santa Barbara is well known for psychology. It's more of like really dissecting the brain, looking at the brain to be able to look in psychology in that aspect. And I realized that wasn't really my interest. I was looking more towards sociology. I wanted to really understand more about society and how society impacts the individual and how the individual impacts society. In 1996, I worked at the Career and Counseling Center. That's when I graduated. And it was just, I helped students be able to connect them with different types of jobs. And I was the one who set up all the interviews between graduating students and job opportunity, job businesses. In 2000, I left the, I'm sorry, 1998, I became a Peace Corps volunteer in Costa Rica, which I will talk more depth in a little bit. In 2000, I was an after-school librarian at Rosa Parks Elementary, which I will talk a little bit more about Rosa Parks as well. 2002, I got my multiple subject bilingual credentials from SDSU, and I became a 3rd grade bilingual teacher at Rosa Parks. In 2004, I got my master's in education. And in 2007, I was a parent academic liaison. And I do want to just talk a little bit about this. You know, it's interesting because when you come into a profession, you know, I know at this point I wanted to be a teacher. And at that time I was access from Rosa Parks. I had been there for 5 years. And I really did not want to leave Rosa Parks. I didn't want to leave the community, which was in City Heights. And I also lived in the neighborhood. I had been there for 10 years. Well, I lived there a total of 10 years. And so I really, my heart was in City Heights and I didn't want to leave the area. And what I ended up doing is I just found ways of, found a way of being able to stay. I was brave enough to ask, at that time it was Price Charities that was doing a lot of, so I was supporting a lot of the programs that we had at Rosa Parks. And I spoke with Mr. Robert Price. And I said, you know, I know that you're doing a lot of work with families here, and I know that you're doing a lot of work here at Rosa Parks, and I really don't want to leave. I got my master's. That's the other thing. Price Charities also paid for my master's. They were paying for all teachers who were interested in getting a master's. And so I was one of them. And I said, look, and I don't want to leave Rosa Parks. I got my master's through you. I want to be able to give back to this community. And so, and that's when Mr. Robert Price said, okay, well, let me see what we can do, and realized that there was a need for somebody to be a liaison between parents and school. And even though at that time we had a parents center that was led by Rosario Ayanacon Martinez, they really wanted also a teacher that could also support parent learning. And so that's when Mr. Robert Price spoke with San Diego Unified and said, look, I will fund this position, but this position has to be, we want Marilyn for this position. And so that's how I became a parent academic liaison for 2 years. And then in those 2 years, we realized that Price Charities really wanted me to really focus more on families in City Heights. And so in particular in Rosa Parks. And so that's when I became the family resource teacher, just specifically for Rosa Parks. And I did that for many years. And once again, this was all funded by Price Charities. And they paid San Diego Unified for my retirement, for my insurance, everything that has to do be as a teacher. And I still continue to have my years, my seniority as a teacher as well. So that if I ever did come back into the district and left Price Charities, then I would still be able to have a position in our district. So I share this story because I really, as educator, I want you to think, okay, maybe at one point you're thinking about expanding your horizon and thinking about, well, what can I do? And I just want to encourage you to be brave enough to ask. You don't lose by asking. You don't lose anything by doing your research and asking around and seeing if there is a place for you that is connected to education, but outside of the classroom.
Hey, Madeline,
in 2014, I became the resource. Yes.
Sorry to jump in, but we had a question
Yes,
really
Brian?
specific to your experience with Mr. Price. How did it feel to have somebody like that who's so interested in you as a person and as an educator that they would provide such resources to really get to where you felt that you needed to be? How did that make you feel?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I am going to tell you, it was such an honor. It really is an honor when somebody sees your passion and sees you being able to service more than, just that being in the classroom, which I think is a wonderful, obviously, thing to do, but also to have somebody realize your potential and want you to be able to service more families. It was quite an honor. I also wanted to share with you as well is that I do have, how do I put it? I do have a friendship with Robert Price. And so he has known me since I was 10 years old. And we've always obviously kept our personal friendship different than our professional. But at this point, I really saw that he really saw me as a professional. And just the fact that he was able to vouch for me and say, you've done an amazing job. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer, he actually came to Costa Rica because he had some businesses there and came to the school where I was working and saw also my work. And so just to be able to be vouched by him, be supported by him, it was quite an honor. And I felt valued and I felt like my voice was heard. Definitely.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And then in 2016, let's say, I became a resource teacher for San Diego Unified Family Engagement. So what ended up happening, the difference here is that around this time, 2014, I ended up actually Price, at this time it was Price Philanthropies, not Price Charities. Mr. Robert Price, actually Rosario Ayano and Martinez came, had a meeting with me and said, look, we see that the district has a family, at this time it was family and community engagement FACE department. And we want to know how would you think about, what would you feel about being part of the district to meet the needs of all of our schools in the City Heights community. So that would mean, I wouldn't only just service Rosa Parks. When I say service, I was more of the teacher that taught all the academics. So the reading, the writing, the math, science to the parents. So at the parent level where they could be able to support their kids at home. And especially with the Common Core state standards, a time where parent, transition into a new type of learning and new type of teaching. And so when I was asked by Price Philanthropies what would I think about expanding once again my horizon and servicing all the 10 elementary schools in the Hoover cluster, and then the 2 middle schools, Monroe Clark and Wilson Middle School. And then obviously encouraging our families to stay within the pathways of the Hoover cluster to Hoover High School, and then encouraging them to go to San Diego State. So definitely once again, another transitions. I didn't think I was ever very good about transitioning into something new, but I surprised myself. I've been surprising myself. And I think as I get older, I take more risks, which I'm usually, maybe because of my background, maybe because of my past. I like things a certain way. And I realize as I get older, I'm being more brave to be able to try new things. And I find that as I try new things, I'm able to support and help more people along the way. And then in 2018, just a little over a year ago, I got my preliminary administrator credential from San Jose with an emphasis on culturally responsive leadership. So that's going to be one of my next steps, is to be either a principal, a vice principal, or principal program manager. So I'm really excited about what the future holds for me as an educator. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So I wanted to talk to you also about my experiences in the Peace Corps, because my work in the Peace Corps correlates very much to the work that I am still doing now as an educator here in the United States. You know, and it's so interesting because, you know, sometimes it's difficult to comprehend, to say, oh, wait a minute, Costa Rica is not as rich as the United States, you know, and yet there are a lot of similarities in the communities that I work in right now, and in these communities I worked in Peace Corps in Costa Rica. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Costa Rica in 1998 to 2000. We did 3 months of training and then 2 years of working in a community. My job was to work with youth, family, and families at risk. And so that meant that I was working in the schools. That meant I was working with homeless children. That means I was working with
Well, sorry, everybody. It looks like we have some connection issues with Madeline. See if she can jump right back in. Looks like she's trying as we speak.
I apologize.
There she is. Yeah, we got you back.
Can you see me now? Yes. Thank you. And so the PANI is equivalent of the child welfare system that we have here in the United States. And so we were partnered with them. You know, during the training, it was really good to get that the training about Costa Rican culture, the language. Fortunately, I already spoke Spanish, so that was really nice to be able to be better at speaking Spanish. And then the history of Costa Rica. Let's see. I also co-taught in kindergarten and third grade classrooms. I trained teachers to be a little bit more creative and interactive with their lesson plans, and particularly the English teachers. So I would teach them on how to get the kids outside, out of their seats, to be able to be more interactive and have a little bit more, you know, fun lesson plans, and still be able to teach the kids English. And then one huge thing I'm very proud of, if you see the pictures on the upper right-hand side, you'll see a picture of myself in blue jeans and a brown shirt and a hat. On the far left, that's me. Gosh, I was what, 25, 26? And my colleagues, we actually organized an international women's retreat for young adults. I still thinking back, I can't believe I even, you know, that we even did this. It was just such a huge accomplishment, where we invited young women from Costa Rica, from Nicaragua, from Panama, from Honduras, from El Salvador, different countries in Central America, and I believe one came from South America. And we did a whole weekend long of this retreat, and we taught the young ladies about protection, about protecting themselves, self-defense, meditation, how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, as you can see, we're having some technical difficulties with her connection. It looks like she's being able to jump right back on. It's nice that she's able to have this kind of response.
Sorry,
you're okay.
Please. My son just came in the room and is utilizing the internet. So just a moment, please.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I'll go ahead and describe some of these pictures that she has included here. The one on the bottom right is actually a view of the neighborhood that she was staying in the Peace Corps. And just take a look at that view. You know, granted, it's a you know, an incredibly impoverished neighborhood, but this is an amazing picture for me that I've taken consideration that it is a beautiful view of San Jose, Costa Rica. That's where she spent her time in the Peace Corps. On the bottom left, we have the president of Costa Rica at the time had stopped by to, I believe it was to commemorate a school that was just opening up. Is that correct, Madeline?
Yeah, so And what you see right now is the president at that time from 1998 to 2002, President Miguel Angel Rodriguez Echeverria. And he had come because I was able to obtain fundings from a computer business that was nearby. I think it was Hewlett Packard had a factory there, had their offices there. And I was able to obtain computers for the elementary school in my community. And you'll see on the far right-hand side, that's what my community looked like. That's myself and one of the children from the community in Tejarcillos a la Juelita. And so as you can see, there's a lot of need in that community. And so just the fact that I was able to write up a grant and present it and be able to get funding for a library/media center at the elementary school. And this was around the time, a little bit after it was already built. And so President Miguel Angel Rodriguez had come to kind of like be it was a political kind of movement, but at the same time, it was to be able to highlight the fact that we had this library media center, which was something very new in communities such as Tejarcillos. So that's me on the left-hand side with the president. Okay. So a lot of my work in Peace Corps, really, I'm able to apply it to the work that I do now. And then after Peace Corps, I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. At that time I was dating, or actually I was engaged to somebody in Costa Rica who are the father of my kids. And I wanted to stay in Costa Rica. And then, but I also wanted to get my teaching credential, and also realized that it would be best for me to return back to the United States and get my teaching credential from here, and then be able to, potentially go back to Costa Rica. I ended up landing in Rosa Parks Elementary in the community called City Heights here in San Diego. And I just want to give you a little bit insight of what the community is like. These are just data from right now, but it also applies from, when I started there in 2000. So at Rosa Parks, 97% of the students are from low income families. 75% students are English language learners. 79% are Hispanic, 13% are Asian. And at Rosa Parks specifically, the 13% are predominantly Vietnamese. And you can see from the picture on my left-hand side, that's myself with some of the Vietnamese parent leaders at Rosa Parks. And this was the Vietnamese New Year in February. We always celebrate at the school. So as you can see, also 34% of our student population were proficient in English, and 29% were proficient in math. And so that's, very low compared to not only the district also percentage, but also the state percentage. City Heights, general, just 95,000 residents living in about a 6.5 square miles here in San Diego. So can you imagine all people, so many people living in one small area, and yet it's so vibrant and so rich with culture and languages, and it's almost like being in the United, what is it? I'm trying to think of, but it's almost like being just all the different people from all around the world living in this small area in City Heights. 42.4% are foreign born. 54% are Latinos, and 19% are Asian or Pacific Islanders. And look, 20.5% are unemployed. So this is, a community that really needs, thank you, United Nations, yes, in City Heights. Thank you, Carla. And there was just a lot of resources that we put into our school, Rosa Parks. There was partnership with, for example, there's a program called School in the Park where we offered students come to Balboa Park, which is a park here in San Diego. It's almost like in New York City, and Central Park. But we, at Balboa Park, we have museums, and we have just all these different opportunities for our kids to be able to learn from. And many of our children at Rosa Parks had never even been to a museum. And so this is also funding that came from Price Philanthropies, at that time Price Charities, that funded students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade to spend 8 weeks of the year being taught by museum experts and zoo experts at actually Balboa Park. So we call it school in a park, and we remind students that it's not a field trip, it's actually school in a park, because they're actually there to learn. And so that's one of the things that we, the Price Philanthropies was able to offer our students. We also have at Rosa Parks, 3 full-time social workers. We also had at that time as well a parent coordinator that specifically met the needs of our Vietnamese families, a parent coordinator that met the needs specifically for our Spanish-speaking families. And it was just, you know, the parent center that was just the hub, and it is still the hub of everything, all parent-centered information at Rosa Parks. At this point right now, we have also throughout these years, Rosa Parks has also been able to open up 2 clinics, Mid-City and La Maestra Clinic. And the whole idea is that we realized that with our data, we saw that many students would be absent. Many students would go to Tijuana for doctor's appointment. And we realized instead of, you know, having our students, you know, miss so much school, why not have clinics right here on campus? So they can see, can be serviced for their medical needs, but they don't have to leave the campus and they don't have to be marked absent or leaving early. So that was amazing. Once again, all these different programs and all these different resources and supports came from funding from Price Charities, and then this right now, Price Philanthropies. So it's just amazing supports that we really offer our families, and not just our families, but also our teachers and our staff. We also have 1 full-time counselor, which is, you know, many schools do not have a full-time counselor. We also have a full-time psychologist, which is not something that every school has in our San Diego Unified School District. And we also have partnership with San Diego State, where if our students stay within the path of Hoover Cluster, so if they stay at Rosa Parks and they go to Monroe Clark or Wilson Middle School and they go to Hoover High School, then there's this program called College Avenue Compact, where they have to meet all the requirements, A through G requirements, and also, you know, obviously satisfy with a GPA. I believe at that time it was a 3.0, but I'm not sure if it's moved up a little bit but ultimately the goal is to get our kids to college, right? Because this is a community where a lot of our children do not end up going to college. And so, and once again, all this has been supported by Price Philanthropies. And there's been other organizations that we also as well partner with. So that's my experiences working at Rosa Parks, and I lived in City Heights for 10 years, so my heart is in City Heights, like I mentioned. I go to the YMCA and work out there along with my families. You know, and sometimes educators think, wow, gosh, you know, we're really mixed with your students and your families. And, you know, it's all about setting boundaries. My families and students are really respectful. And in fact, I feel like kind of like a little bit of a celebrity, because I've been there in City Heights. I've been connected with City Heights for the last 20 years. So everybody's like, hi, Miss Leviton. Hi, Miss Leviton. And it's just a really good feeling to know that I'm making a difference in this community. Okay, let's go ahead on with the next slide.
Yeah, we had one other question really quick before we move on, and we have about 9 minutes before we have to end the session. So I want to try to get some of these questions in, but we wanted to know what skill, training, or part of your education do you think was most important in terms of connecting with students and families?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I think my experience as a Peace Corps volunteer, and also my experiences as when I was getting my teaching credential, I took a class, a multicultural class with a professor named Jesus Nieto. And he had us, one of the assignments that he had us do was go into an area where we don't speak the language, we don't know the culture, just to give us a feeling of how many of our students may be feeling being in school and not being able to know the language or the culture. And so I decided to go to a Vietnamese church. And it was just amazing. I mean, it was just the experience. It just really made me connect more to my students and my families, and realize that, you know, it took me back of when I was a kid and didn't know the language. And so that really has driven me to be able to be knowledgeable more about the culture, be able to go to different meetings. It may not be within my compass of being an educator, but I want to expand myself more so I can be better support my families and my students. And the education too, as an educator, always continue, like, I mean, obviously what we did last year as an education is not the same as what we're doing this year, right? Or what we did 5 years ago, it's not the same as what we're doing now. So being brave enough to always expand your horizon and get to know, have more information. Right now, I've been expanding my horizon as an educator by going to all the district meetings, you know, the CAC for special ed, the DAC, just any kind of council meetings where they're encouraging families to participate. I go to those meetings to see what families are saying and what it is that they're needing in support from our department, family engagement. Did that? I hope that answered your question in some of it.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And I believe this slide here is going to be covering kind of the San Diego Unified's COVID-19 response, but really I think we want to see where your family engagement department is really focused on with this now.
Yes, yes. I really want to highlight our San Diego Unified Family Engagement Department because we really do amazing work, and it's really an honor to work with a group of dedicated colleagues that really focuses on family engagement and just involving our families also, and knowing that the part that families as stakeholders is an important voice at the table when it comes to our children's education. And so we've been very busy. We have, you know, between March, when we went on, when we were quarantined, our department has distributed 1,100 Visa gift cards to homeless and refugee families. This is from an anonymous donor. We've also created Parents as Partners, which is right there. There's a website, and I hope that you are able to put that in the chat as well. And I'll give you information. These are different, this was made by a committee from our district that really, excuse me, that talked about how to meet the needs of our families as partners during this online learning. And so there's different videos there about life, a day in the life of online learning for a kindergartner, for a special ed teacher, for a 5th grade student. And so that's a really good resources for our families. We've done also presentations to school personnel regarding what we're doing. We have distributed books during our food distribution sites with Raising a Reader, making sure we're getting books to our young ones. Also, maintaining communication with families. We have in our department, we have some great, my colleagues have been able to continue being the liaison between our families that we've been servicing all these years, and letting them know that we, you know, doing this online learning and doing this distance learning, we haven't forgotten about them, and just checking up on them and seeing any and connecting them with the resources. Also, we've been ensuring that families, if they ask us about where to get a laptop, I know that with the laptops, we have distributed 80,000 laptops to our families. And meals, we have distributed, not us ourselves, but we have been the voice where we connect our families and ensure that they're getting the laptops, where to get them, the hotspots, where to get the meals. Our district has distributed 3 million meals to our students during this time. And just pretty much making sure, like, for example, in Project Ujima is a program that we have specifically for our African-American families, and meeting with them and making sure that, you know, how they're holding up, especially during, you know, these difficult times that we're seeing in the news. And also we have one of my other colleagues is really focusing on our refugee families in the City Heights area, and just making sure that their voices are heard and connecting them to the resources. We have a childcare colleague who's also doing different videos online and different a website where they're connecting families with different resources, right? And that would be able to, that our families are able to use with their children. And so we have a person who's really a tech guru who's doing connecting our families with Power School, with any kind of programs, that platforms, helping them with the platforms. And so as you can tell, we've been very busy doing a lot of family sessions. We actually had one last night to talk about phase 1, which we had 245 participants. And so it was a very interesting meeting. And, you know, in general, parents want to be heard. They want to be, you know, they said these are some difficult times. And it's not just difficult for our parents, but also for our students and all our stakeholders in education. And then before we end, I want to also just quickly show a couple minutes of the video that we have that we show our families regarding resources available for them. So yes, Brian, let's go ahead and show the video. So you can find this video at that website as well. And I believe in the chat also, it should be the link to this website. Oh, we can't hear it. So in here in this video, we talk a lot about the resources that we have available for families. We have a video about high impact home strategies in reading. We have connections, how to fill out the census in this way. Also different supports as in where they can get a hotspot, where they can get laptops, how to just be in touch with all the resources available, not just in our department, but also in the district. This is a great team that I was just talking about, our program manager, Ms. Pamela King, and pictures from our department. We also have a calendar where we put all our workshops and our events for our families to be able to access and ensure that they feel invited and their voice has been heard. Information about being a volunteer. I think that's good, Brian, thank you. And then just ultimately, I just want to thank you so much. I want to just end this presentation on the left-hand side. That was my first grade teacher, and her name was Miss Judy that I had talked about in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And look at that face. I mean, that's what I looked like when I was 7.5 years old. And as you could tell, I was just so happy to be in a school. I was elated and ecstatic to have a teacher that actually heard me, because by being heard and being valued, it just made me more comfortable to be able to be a good student, to be able to do everything that I needed to do in order to achieve academic success. So thank you, Ms. Judy. And then on the right-hand side, oh, I'm sorry, if you can go back. And on the right-hand side is when I graduated with my preliminary administrative credential with about 1.5 years ago from San Diego State. And so as you can tell, I'm so excited. So who would have thought a child from the streets coming, being where I'm at right now in the job that I have, a job that I'm so passionate about and I strongly believe, and already having such so many academic just accomplishments and achievements. And I also wanted to finish out by reading that last quote, Brian, if you could please go back. This is from Maya Angelou. I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And for me, if you make me feel welcomed and you make me feel valued, even when you look at me and you make prejudgments of me and you come in with biases, I just want to let you know that I really, when you embrace me and you make me feel valued and welcome, I'm all open. I am your best friend for life. And I really feel that that's how our students and our families also feel as well. If you make them feel welcome and make them feel welcomed and valued, then they will also be able to be open to work with you as well. So thank you so much for being here, and appreciate the time that you've taken to be here to listen to my story.
Thank you so much, Madeline. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing journey. And honestly, I believe not just educators, but this is something that that students can take away as well. That incredible story to relate to. So thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and really digging down deep, because that's what we really need in these times. So thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, everybody that has joined us. Please take a screenshot of your certification to show that you did attend, and we'll make it even bigger. And then we would love to see you at the keynote panel coming up at about 3 o'clock. So thank you again. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Have a good day.